So I want you to just imagine a Swiss Army knife for a second.
Okay, sure.
But, we aren't talking about that classic little red pocket tool you might just toss into a camping backpack.
Right, the one you keep in a junk drawer just in case you need, like, a tiny pair of scissors.
Exactly. I want you to picture a multi-tool that has absolutely every single instrument you could ever possibly need to survive in the modern world.
So we're talking maps, your bank, your news.
Your entire social network, your memories, your entertainment, all of it.
Yeah, that's a heavy tool.
Right. But here is the kicker. This particular Swiss Army knife, it actively whispers your name to get you to open it.
Oh, that's creepy. But so true.
It is. I mean, it physically buzzes against your leg. It lights up your dark room with these bright, carefully engineered, beautiful colors.
It's practically begging for your attention.
Yes, exploiting your deepest psychological wiring just to get you to touch it. So given all of that, how on earth do you just leave that object sitting on your nightstand, turn your back on it, and walk out the door?
I mean, it's the ultimate predicament of our era, isn't it?
It really is.
Because you're asking a human being to voluntarily separate from their primary survival mechanism and their primary entertainment center and, their main tether to the rest of humanity, all rolled into one impossibly sleek, glowing rectangle.
Right.
From an evolutionary standpoint, putting down the ultimate tool is a completely unnatural proposition for the modern brain.
And that profound tension, that incredibly difficult, almost painful proposition is exactly what we are exploring today. Welcome to the deep dive.
We are thrilled you're here with us.
We really are. And if you are listening to this right now, I mean, maybe you're commuting or you're at your desk, maybe doing the dishes.
Chances are that Swiss Army knife is within arm's reach.
Exactly. So today, our mission is to figure out what actually happens when we leave it in the drawer. We're looking at this fascinating transcript from an English language learning show called The English Leap.
We aren't here for a grammar lesson, right?
Oh, no, not at all. We're here to dissect the remarkable psychological experiment they documented. Like, what happens to the human mind and body when a person attempts to go 24 hours entirely without a smartphone?
24 hours. Wow.
Right. And we are going to structure this deep dive chronologically, tracking this experiment strictly from the initial jarring shock of waking up phone free.
Which is rough.
So rough. Navigating the invisible tripwires of the workday, all the way to the profound evening reflections and clarity that, only came after hours of digital silence.
What makes this specific experiment so compelling is the granular, almost microscopic emotional precision they apply to the experience.
Yeah, they don't just gloss over it.
Exactly. They don't just offer the tired cliche that putting your phone away is hard.
Yeah.
They chronicle the minute-by-minute shifts in human behavior.
And the subtle rewiring of psychology.
Right, and the raw mechanics of emotional regulation when that vital device is just abruptly removed from the equation.
But before we step into the timeline of this journey and look at that first morning, I want to push back on something real quick.
Okay, let's hear it.
The transcript poses this major question right at the top about why this experiment is so terrifying for people. They talk about the thought of this day making someone feel like their thumb started to cry inside.
Which is such a vivid image.
It is. But I have to ask, is it really just about the utility? Is it really just because the phone is an alarm clock and a camera? I mean, we have physical alarm clocks.
It's true. We survived before Google Maps.
Exactly. So why is the attachment so deeply visceral that the idea of a day without it induces actual anxiety?
Well, that is the perfect question to frame this whole discussion, and it goes far beyond functional utility.
Okay.
Yes, the device has fundamentally transcended its original purpose. We have consolidated 50 different physical objects into one piece of glass.
Right.
But if we dig into the underlying psychology presented in the source, the core reason it is so difficult for people to disconnect today is because the device has become our ultimate escape.
Escape. Let's unpack that. Because usually when we say escape, we think of escaping a bad day at work or, I don't know, a stressful family situation.
Sure.
But it's much more microscopic than that, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The escape they're talking about is the micro-escape. We use the device to escape a 5-second lull in a conversation.
Wow, yeah.
We use it to escape the momentary awkwardness of standing in line at a coffee shop. We use it to escape the silence of our own bedrooms.
It's just always there.
Right. It is a constant, readily available valve to release the pressure of any negative or even neutral emotion. So asking someone to put it in a drawer for 24 hours isn't merely asking them to be inconvenienced.
No, it's way bigger.
It is asking them to face the world and, more importantly, to face their own minds entirely unbuffered. You are stripping away the emotional shock absorbers.
Man, okay, that paints a rather intimidating picture. And I think it brings us right to the very first moment of the experiment. Let's set the scene chronologically.
Okay, the morning.
It's morning. The sun is just starting to peek through the blinds, the eyes open, and immediately, before conscious thought even really boots up, the trouble begins.
The muscle memory of waking up is, it's one of the most revealing parts of this entire transcript. They describe the eyes opening and the hand moving almost autonomously.
Like a zombie.
Exactly.
Oh.
It really highlights the sheer terrifying automation of our modern behavior.
It's pure physical reflex. The text details this routine with chilling accuracy. The person wakes up, and before they even have a moment to greet themselves,
or even realize they're in a bed.
Right. The hand is already reaching for the nightstand. The brain is instantaneously obsessed with notifications.
The internal monologue just starts firing.
Rapid fire sequence of who texted me, who posted, what catastrophic global event happened while I was unconscious.
Yeah, all of this cognitive loading occurs before a single drop of water is consumed, before the feet even touch the floor.
It's wild. Breakfast isn't even a concept yet.
Consider the psychological mechanism at play there. It is a complete bypass of internal reflection. The very first cognitive act of a human being's day is completely externalized.
Right.
The first thought isn't, how did I sleep? Or, how does my body feel?
What's my intention for today?
Exactly. The primary overriding thought is, who demanded my attention while I was asleep?
You're inviting the internet into your bed.
Literally the second you open your eyes. The individual is instantly prioritizing the inputs and anxieties of the outside world over their own internal state.
And so on the specific morning of this 24-hour experiment, the person wakes up, the eyes open, the hand executes its automatic sweep across the bedside table, expecting to find the smooth glass and cold metal.
But instead,
it hits nothing but air.
It's a brilliant description. They call it grabbing the ghost of your phone.
Oh, I love that phrase, grabbing the ghost.
It is quite literally phantom limb syndrome for the digital age. The neural pathways are so deeply entrenched that the hand expects the weight and shape of the device.
And when it finds nothing?
The internal reaction isn't just mild confusion. It's an immediate, aggressive spike of anxiety. The brain loudly demands to know where its screen is.
It wants its dopamine.
Right. The delivery system is expecting its morning hit, and the supply has been cut off.
Now, if you are listening to this, I guarantee you have felt that phantom grab. Maybe you left your phone in the other room and you reach into your pocket and your heart skips a literal beat when it's empty.
We've all been there.
But here, the person can't just go to the other room to get it. They are committed. They are forced to find replacements for that ingrained morning scroll.
And they had to be specific.
Right. The text outlines 3 specific, incredibly small activities that this person had to engage in to replace the habit. Activities that sound mundane, but suddenly carried massive psychological weight.
Let's look at the first one.
Yeah, what did they do?
The first replacement activity is profoundly simple, yet it felt incredibly jarring. In order to know what time it was, they had to look at a real physical clock hanging on the wall.
Which, sounds completely normal until you realize how rare that actually is now. The transcript explicitly notes that this small act evoked the distinct feeling of living in 1999.
It really is like time travel.
Why is that, though? Why does looking at a wall clock feel so strange?
Because the smartphone has successfully monopolized basic utility. We become so entirely dependent on that glowing screen for absolutely everything.
Even just the time of day.
Exactly. So physical objects designed for a single purpose have been rendered invisible. A wall clock is just background decor until the phone is gone.
Right.
When you are forced to use the physical environment to orient yourself in time, you're suddenly pulled out of the digital ether and anchored back into the physical room you are occupying.
Which leads perfectly into the second small activity they mention. Without the phone there to instantly hijack their sensory processing, the person was forced to just listen.
Just listen?
Yeah. To listen to the ambient sounds that usually go entirely unnoticed.
Specifically, they noted hearing the birds outside the window, the distant sound of cars driving by on the street, and, perhaps most intimately, the sound of their own breathing in the room.
But I want to be clear about something the transcript points out because it's vital. This wasn't some Zen retreat moment.
No, not at all.
They make it very clear that the silence was not peaceful. At least not at first.
Right. The silence is described as intense. It was loud. And we have to ask why. Why is the sound of birds and distant traffic perceived as an intense, loud silence?
Yeah, why?
It's because the modern brain is habituated to a constant, high-paced, high-reward stream of digital information. When you abruptly deny the brain that hit, the baseline ambient noise of biological life feels overwhelming.
The contrast is staggering.
Exactly.
It's the equivalent of walking out of a heavy metal concert into a library. The quiet practically rings in your ears, which brings us to the third seemingly mundane activity of this new morning routine.
The kettle.
Yes, standing in the kitchen, waiting for the kettle to boil to make coffee.
Under normal circumstances, standing in the kitchen waiting for water to boil is prime scrolling territory.
Oh, 100%.
A kettle takes, 3 to 4 minutes? In the digital age, 3 minutes is an eternity. It is more than enough time to consume dozens of micro pieces of content, reply to an email, or check 3 different social media platforms.
The phone acts as a pacifier for that tiny window of idle time.
Right. But without it, the person is reduced to just standing there, watching the water. And this is where the core emotional shift of the morning occurs.
Standing there in the quiet kitchen, watching the water heat up, the person realizes they're experiencing a profound sense of vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Now, I can hear a skeptic listening to this thinking, come on, it's just making coffee in your own house. Why is that vulnerable? What is scary about a kettle?
That's a fair question.
How does the source explain this sudden rush of emotion?
Well, the vulnerability arises because the device had been functioning as a highly effective emotional buffer. When you are scrolling while the water boils, your cognitive bandwidth is occupied by external stimuli.
You aren't feeling your own feelings.
Exactly. You are processing the curated feelings of others. Take away the device, and all of the underlying unprocessed emotions of the morning, the residual tiredness, the ambient anxieties about work, the deep, unfiltered thoughts about life.
They all just rush rapidly to the surface.
The device was the heavy lid on a boiling pot. Remove the lid, and you are forced to look at what's bubbling underneath.
There is a line in the transcript that highlights the tragic irony of this perfectly. We usually know vastly more about what complete strangers across the country are eating for breakfast on our feeds than we know about our own emotional state on any given morning.
It's really sad when you put it like that.
We are hyper-connected to the trivial minutia of the lives of influencers we will never meet, yet we are entirely disconnected from the physical and emotional reality of our own bodies standing in our own kitchens.
The forced quiet of the phone-free morning mandates an encounter with the self. And as they note, sitting in that unmediated space with yourself can feel a little scary and very honest at the same time.
It's an honesty we have engineered our modern lives to avoid.
We really have.
So surviving the kitchen is one thing. That's a private vulnerability. But the chronological journey marches on. Eventually, you have to leave the house.
The real test.
You have to open the front door and step outside without that digital safety net in your pocket. And that introduces an entirely different level of exposure.
The transcript uses a highly evocative analogy for this exact moment. Leaving the house without the smartphone induces a visceral, almost panicked reaction that they compare to leaving the house without shoes.
Now, I'm going to push back on that analogy for a second.
Okay.
Shoes are a physical necessity. They protect your feet from glass and asphalt. A phone is, at its core, a communication and entertainment tool. Why would they equate leaving a phone behind with a fundamental lack of clothing? Isn't that a bit of an exaggeration?
It sounds like an exaggeration until you consider what the phone actually represents in the context of modern public navigation. The phone is our map.
True. Without it, we fear getting physically lost.
It is our emergency lifeline. Without it, we fear being stranded. But most importantly, it is our social armor.
Social armor. Tell me more about that.
When you walk down the street staring at your phone, you are broadcasting a signal to the world. You're saying, I am occupied, I am important, do not engage with me.
Right.
Leaving the phone behind strips you of that armor. You are suddenly present in the public sphere, entirely unprotected from the gaze and potential interaction of strangers. It feels naked. It feels like leaving without shoes.
Which results in this physical tic that I think everyone can relate to, the empty pocket syndrome.
Oh, yes.
The transcript describes the person engaging in this repetitive, almost neurotic padding of the pockets. The classic modern checklist. Phone, keys, wallet, phone, keys, wallet.
Or again.
The hand taps the leg, realizes a critical piece is missing, and the brain sends a little shockwave of alarm. Like, are you sure? Are you really going to walk into the world like this?
It's the brain's threat detection system malfunctioning. It registers the absence of the device as a critical vulnerability. And nowhere, according to the source material, is that feeling of public exposure and vulnerability felt more acutely than in small, confined public spaces.
The ultimate crucible of the morning commute.
The elevator.
The elevator. It is a fascinating sociological space. What they explore here is the concept of the elevator escape screen.
Yeah, historically, elevators have always been awkward. You take a group of strangers, put them in a tiny metal box, and slowly move them vertically.
The societal contract dictates you don't stare, you don't really talk, you just endure the proximity.
But the smartphone fundamentally altered that dynamic.
Yeah.
You no longer have to endure the awkwardness. When you step into an elevator now, pulling out your phone gives you an immediate, socially sanctioned free pass.
You are excused from the physical reality of the metal box.
Exactly. You don't have to navigate eye contact. You don't have to nod or make painful small talk about the weather. Your eyes are locked on the screen, and you have escaped.
But on this 24-hour experiment, that escape route was completely cut off. The person stepped into the elevator, the doors closed, and they were trapped.
Trapped with their own thoughts.
They just had to stand there with their own thoughts, surrounded by other people. They had to look at the blank wall, watch the digital floor numbers slowly tick up, or, resort to staring intensely at their own shoes.
It is a forced confrontation with reality, however incredibly mundane that reality might be.
But here is the beautiful twist in the narrative. Because you simply cannot stare at the tips of your shoes forever, the person is eventually forced to look up. And when they look up, they experience what we might call small victories of exposure.
Small victories, I like that.
Because the phone is gone, they are forced to connect with the real world. The transcript details this seemingly insignificant moment. The person looked up, made eye contact with a neighbor they usually ignore, and smiled.
And the neighbor smiled back.
It sounds almost ridiculous to point out, doesn't it? I smiled at a human, and they smiled back.
But the fact that this warranted inclusion in the experiment's findings shows how starved we are for these micro-interactions. The text notes that this tiny exchange felt real. It carried an authentic weight that a like on a social media post completely lacks.
And it changes how you observe the world, too. The described sitting at a bus stop later that morning.
Right.
In a normal timeline, this person would be utterly absorbed in their feed, head down, thumb scrolling, completely oblivious to their surroundings until the bus arrived.
But stripped of the device, their attention was forced outward. They became an active observer.
They noticed a child near the bench, playing intently with a stone. They noticed an older man quietly reading a physical paper newspaper.
They realized that there is an entire, complex, vibrant world operating completely outside the boundaries of the little rectangle.
The little rectangle, yeah.
They weren't just passing through the world while staring at a digital simulation of it. They were actually in the world.
If you're listening to this and you take public transit, I challenge you to try that tomorrow. Just keep the phone in your pocket at the bus stop or on the train for 5 minutes and look at the humans around you.
It's astonishing what you see.
It really is when you stop looking at the screen. But eventually, the commute ends, and we arrive at the next major hurdle in our chronological timeline. The workday.
Oh boy.
Now, this is a completely different battlefield. If the morning was about emotional vulnerability and the commute was about social awkwardness, the workday is a war for attention.
The workplace is where the constant connectivity of the smartphone is most heavily rationalized. We tell ourselves we need it for emails, for Slack messages, for staying in the loop.
We really do.
But the source highlights a universal psychological trap that happens at work, something I think absolutely everyone listening can relate to on a deep level.
Yeah.
It is the just a second lie.
This part of the transcript hit me right between the eyes. We all do it. The source describes the familiar destructive pattern. You sit down at your desk to work on a difficult, cognitively demanding task. You type for maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes.
And then inevitably your brain encounters a bit of friction.
Right. Maybe the task gets confusing, or maybe you just feel a fleeting twinge of boredom, and immediately your brain suggests a solution.
Hey, this is hard. Let's just check the phone quickly.
I'll check it for a second. 1 second to see if I have any messages, then I'll get right back to this difficult spreadsheet.
It is a brilliant, insidious self-deception. The brain promises a micro break. But as the text rightly points out, that 1 second is a massive liar.
A massive lie.
Your smartphone is engineered by thousands of the smartest behavioral psychologists on the planet to ensure you do not put it down after 1 second.
No way.
That 1 second of checking a notification inevitably spirals into 10 minutes of scrolling a feed, 15 minutes of reading a thread, and suddenly your deep focus is entirely shattered.
The friction of the work task was avoided, but the productivity is destroyed.
Exactly.
Now, on the day of the experiment, this person hit that wall of friction. The brain encountered the difficult task and instinctively reached for the escape hatch, but the hatch was locked. The phone wasn't there.
Right.
So what happens to the brain when it is denied the just a second lie?
The mechanism of distraction is fascinating to observe in a vacuum. Initially, the source notes the brain rebels. It begs for the device.
It wants it so bad.
It craves that cheap dopamine hit of novel information to relieve the tension of the work. The person feels an intense, jittery restlessness. But, and this is arguably the most crucial takeaway for anyone struggling with productivity, eventually the mind gives up.
It surrenders.
Exactly. Because the distraction is physically unavailable, the craving eventually subsides, and the mind calms down.
Wow.
Without the constant option to escape, the person found that they could simply sit and do one single thing for a remarkably longer period of time. The fractured attention span slowly, painstakingly started to knit itself back together.
This leads to a rather uncomfortable realization mentioned in the transcript. The person recognized and admitted that they were constantly getting in their own way.
Yeah, that's a tough one to face.
For months, maybe years, they had been blaming their lack of focus on external factors. Their boss was too demanding, the office was too noisy, modern life was just too stressful.
But the cold, hard reality of the phone-free day proved that their own scrolling habits were the primary barricade to their productivity.
It requires a massive shift in personal accountability. We actively sabotage our own focus by keeping the ultimate distraction machine on our desks, and then we complain to our colleagues that we just can't seem to focus.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
Very tough.
But it's also incredibly empowering. If you are the one getting in your own way, if you are the architect of your own distraction, you are also the only one who has the power to step aside, change the physical environment, and reclaim your attention.
Okay, so you have survived the visceral vulnerability of the morning silence. You have navigated the stark social exposure of the commute and the elevator. You have fought the internal battle for your attention span at your desk and won.
You're doing great.
You pack up your things, you head home, and you think, I did it. The ultimate test. The most profound contradiction of the entire day is waiting for you when you put your key in the front door.
The home dynamic.
Let's look at it.
They paint a very stark, highly recognizable picture of the modern living room. When the subject of the experiment returns home, they describe a scene that is likely playing out in tens of millions of households at this exact moment.
It's a scene that gave me pause because it is so common, it feels almost invisible until you actively look at it. The transcript describes a typical evening. Dad comes home from work, walks through the door, throws his keys on the entryway table.
Walks into the living room.
Sits heavily on the sofa and boom, within 3 seconds, the phone is in his hand. The kids are excited he's home. Maybe they want to talk about their day at school or show him a drawing they made. But Dad is completely locked into what the source calls scroll mode.
And the text is careful to note that this isn't just a critique of the father. It's an entire ecosystem of isolation.
Yes.
Mom is sitting at the dining table, physically present but cognitively elsewhere, scrolling on her phone.
Mm-hmm.
The kids, perhaps rebuffed by the parents' lack of engagement, are lying on the floor, deeply engrossed in their own tablets or devices.
It's just wild to think about.
You have 4 human beings physically occupying the exact same 20 by 20 foot square of physical space, yet they are existing in 4 completely different, utterly isolated digital universes.
This is the core contradiction of modern technology, and the transcript explores it so beautifully. The smartphone is, without a doubt, a miracle of human connection.
For sure.
It allows you to instantly video chat with a relative who lives thousands of miles away across an ocean. But simultaneously, at that exact same miraculous moment, it fundamentally removes you from the presence of the human beings breathing the same air as you, sitting just 2 feet away.
Together but lonely. That is the exact phrase used in the transcript, and it is a devastatingly accurate encapsulation of the modern familial condition.
Together but lonely. Wow.
We are physically proximate, yet emotionally and cognitively absent. We are giving our peak focused attention to the digital ether, to emails from bosses and photos from strangers, and we are offering only our residual, distracted, half-listening attention to the people we supposedly love the most.
When they say that sentence hurts a little because it is so true, you can feel the weight of it. If you're listening to this while your family is in the other room, ask yourself, when you walk in there, where will your eyes be?
It's a heavy question.
But the beauty of this source material is that it doesn't just wallow in the despair of the problem. It extracts very specific, incredibly simple habits that the person enacted during this 24-hour experiment to shatter that dynamic and actively improve presence. Let's walk through those habits because they are immediately applicable.
The first habit they point out is almost insultingly basic, yet it is wildly neglected in modern homes. Actually, sitting down and looking at family members directly when you interact with them.
Why does that matter so much? I mean, if I'm scrolling Twitter, I can still hear my kid talking. I can say, wow, that's great. I'm multitasking. Why does the physical posture matter?
Because humans are highly attuned to nonverbal cues regarding attention. When you remove the physical barrier of the screen, you change the entire posture of the interaction. If your face is pointed at a glowing rectangle, you are communicating that the rectangle is the priority.
Right.
The text specifically highlights the second, related habit, ensuring eyes meet eyes instead of eyes meeting screens.
Eyes meet eyes.
Eye contact demands mutual vulnerability and active listening. You cannot truly passively listen while making sustained eye contact. The source points out how almost radical and intense it felt to just sit and look at a spouse or a child without a screen competing for a share of the bandwidth.
And the third habit they mention is verbal. It's about asking simple, direct questions that require presence.
Like what?
The text gives examples like asking a partner, "How was your day?" Or asking a child, "What did you learn today?" Or saying, "Come here and show me your picture." Now, these aren't groundbreaking philosophical inquiries.
No, they aren't.
Yeah.
But the point is that they require a level of present attention to execute and to receive the answer that scrolling actively prevents. It's about consciously choosing to be an active participant in the physical space rather than a passive consumer of the digital space.
Right, making that choice.
But, as the transcript acknowledges, relying purely on willpower to enact these habits is a losing game when the device is designed to be addictive. Therefore, they outline concrete tips for creating physical boundaries in the house. Environmental design.
Establishing phone-free zones. This makes so much sense. If the phone is sitting on the dining table, it's a loaded gun of distraction. So what specific zones did the experiment recommend implementing?
To make these habits of presence actually stick, the text specifically recommends explicitly making the bedroom a phone-free zone overnight.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It directly attacks that morning vulnerability and the muscle memory we spent so much time discussing earlier. If the phone physically charges in the kitchen or the hallway, you absolutely cannot roll over and grab the ghost of it. You are forced to wake up to your own thoughts.
And the second major zone they emphasize is the breakfast table. Keeping phones completely away from the table during meals ensures that the start of the day is anchored in physical human connection, not isolated digital consumption. You look at your family, not the news.
By establishing these rigid geographical boundaries within the home, you create safe harbors of presence, areas where the constant pull of the digital world is muted, allowing the physical world to take precedence.
And as the chronological timeline of our deep dive shows, creating that presence and enduring that digital silence all day sets the stage for the absolute climax of this 24-hour experiment.
The evening.
Let's move into the evening. The sun goes down, the workday is over, the family is together without screens. This is where the emotional payoff of the entire grueling day finally happens.
The evening brings a massive, noticeable shift in how the individual communicates. The source highlights a very specific interaction where a friend asks how the phone-free day is going. Now, under normal digitally buffered circumstances, we all have a built-in reflex to brush off these kinds of check-in questions.
Right. The text calls it the play it safe reflex. The instinct is to give the easiest, most socially frictionless answer possible. So yeah, it's fine, just a bit different. We do this constantly. We give polite, shallow answers to protect ourselves from the energy cost of deeper engagement.
But here is the critical turning point. Because this person had spent the entire day completely without their digital buffer.
They sat with the intense silence in the morning.
They endured the vulnerability of the commute.
They fought through the friction at work.
They broke that play it safe reflex. The emotional armor had been worn down. So instead of playing it safe, they offered a moment of radical, uncomfortable honesty.
I want to read the quote directly from the transcript because the answer they gave to their friend is so deeply human and powerful. They said, "Honestly, it's hard. I feel restless. I keep reaching for something that is not there, but I also feel more here, more present."
That admission is profound. It doesn't sugarcoat the experience. It acknowledges the raw discomfort, the physical restlessness, the phantom reaching, but it also simultaneously recognizes the immense grounding value of the exercise, the sensation of feeling more here.
Yeah.
And this new willingness, to be honest, born from a day of unbuffered reality, opens the door to an even deeper connection later that evening.
Which leads to the climax of the narrative. The text describes a scene later that night. A quiet family conversation over a cup of tea, completely and entirely devoid of phones. No TV in the background, no scrolling under the table.
Just them.
And in this safe, intensely present environment, the person finally, as the text put it, poured their heart out.
They articulated a deep, chronic exhaustion that I think a massive portion of the modern population feels, but rarely verbalizes because we are too busy scrolling to identify it.
So true.
The text details how the person shared the immense, unyielding, invisible pressure of being constantly online. The suffocating need to always answer text messages within minutes, the performative pressure to be constantly witty and fun in multiple group chats, the heavy burden of always curating a digital life that looks perfectly put together for an online audience.
It is genuinely exhausting. It is essentially a second, full-time, unpaid job managing a digital persona. And what happens when they finally admit this out loud without a screen in front of their face?
The reaction is incredible.
The text notes that the family laughed, they almost cried, and most importantly, they leaned in and admitted that they felt the exact same crushing pressure.
This specific moment highlights the undeniable power of physical empathy over digital communication. The Force makes a striking, vital observation here. One single honest, face-to-face vulnerable talk over tea proved infinitely more powerful and restorative than 100 well-crafted text messages.
100 texts.
Texting is incredibly efficient at transmitting data and information, but it severely struggles to transmit true, resonant human empathy in the way a phone-free conversation can.
So as the 24 hours draw to a close, what does this all mean? Let's summarize the massive emotional transformation this person underwent. If you were to map their emotional state from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., what does the curve look like?
If we synthesize the journey, it was a remarkable arc. It began in the morning with intense struggle and resistance. There were the phantom grabs, a feeling of deep, restless vulnerability, a panicked brain searching for its dopamine,
and an overwhelming sense that the ambient silence of life was far too loud.
It was a state of high friction.
But by the evening, through forced exposure to reality, that struggle had morphed into profound clarity. The person realized something critical, a fundamental truth about their relationship with the piece of glass and metal. They recognized that the smartphone had become a safety blanket.
Precisely. It was a high-tech safety blanket used continuously to cover up and smother entirely normal, deeply human experiences. They were using it to smother momentary boredom, to distract from fleeting sadness, or to buffer simple social awkwardness in an elevator.
The ultimate realization, the waking up moment, as the text beautifully frames it, was the chilling understanding that for years their mind had been living half inside the screen.
Half inside the screen.
Even when they were physically present at the dinner table with their family or physically outside looking at the trees, a massive percentage of their cognitive and emotional bandwidth was constantly siphoned off, trapped in the digital world. They were never fully 100% physically and mentally in the same place at the same time.
Waking up to that truth, realizing that you have been living a divided, fractionated life, is the ultimate transformation of the experiment. It's the painful but necessary first step to becoming whole again.
Okay, before we transition to laying out the final, highly specific action plan for you, the listener, so you can test this yourself, we need to talk about language. We need to talk about how we frame this experience.
Yes, the vocabulary.
Because to truly master this concept, to really internalize the psychological lessons of this 24-hour experiment, We have to master the vocabulary used to describe it. Remember, the source material we are using today, the transcript, is technically an English language learning show. And to teach their listeners about this complex, modern phenomenon, they put a heavy emphasis on 10 specific vocabulary words.
But what is crucial to understand here is why they chose these specific words. They aren't teaching technical jargon. They aren't defining terms like algorithm or bandwidth or interface.
Right.
They were using visceral, heavy, emotionally charged language. Understanding this vocabulary isn't a patronizing grammar lesson. It is exploring the psychological taxonomy of digital withdrawal. Naming an experience with precise emotional language gives you power over it. It moves the experience from a vague, ambient sense of modern anxiety into a defined, manageable framework.
Exactly. So let's go through the language they use. We are going to list the 10 key vocabulary words and phrases they focus on, provide their simple definitions, and look at the exact examples the text uses because it perfectly maps the emotional journey we just discussed.
Okay, let's do it. The first word in their taxonomy of disconnection is one we used right at the start of our deep dive. Obsessed.
Obsessed. They define this simply as when your brain cannot stop thinking about something. It is always in your mind, controlling your thoughts.
And the exact example they use from the text is, in the morning, I was obsessed with checking my notifications.
Oh, yeah.
It perfectly captures that uncontrollable physical compulsion we feel before we even fully wake up. It's not a choice, it's an obsession.
Word number 2 is exaggerate.
To exaggerate is to make something sound bigger or stronger or more dramatic than the literal truth, usually to emphasize a feeling.
The example they provide is incredibly relatable. Sometimes I say I checked my phone 1,000 times today. I exaggerate, but it feels like that. I love this because it shows how the psychological weight of the habit feels massive. You didn't literally check it 1,000 times, but your brain feels the fatigue as if you did.
Next is a word used to describe the sensory experience. Intense.
Intense. They define this as something very strong, heavy, and powerful. It is not soft or light or easy to ignore.
The text deploys this word to describe the morning environment. On my no-phone day, the silence in the morning felt intense.
Which is brilliant.
I think so too. Without the constant, fast-paced digital noise, the normal quiet of a kitchen becomes a heavy, palpable, almost physical force.
Word number 4 gets to the core of the emotional struggle. Vulnerable.
Vulnerable means feeling open, exposed, and easy to hurt. Your feelings are resting right close to the surface, unshielded.
The exact example is, walking outside without my phone made me feel vulnerable, like I could not hide. The phone is a psychological shield. When you remove the shield, you are left exposed to the gaze of the world and, more frighteningly, to your own internal monologue.
Then we move to a conceptual word, contradiction.
A contradiction is a situation where two things do not match or agree. They cannot both logically be true in the same way, yet they exist together.
This represents the core thesis of the family segment. It is a contradiction that phones connect us to the world, but sometimes make us feel incredibly lonely in our own living rooms.
It is the ultimate tragic paradox of a digital age. We have never been more connected, and we have never been more isolated.
Word 6 is a behavioral phrase. Play it safe.
When you play it safe, you choose the easy, comfortable option. You do not take an emotional risk.
The example, when people ask, "How are you?" I play it safe and say, "I'm fine." It's the reflexive avoidance of deep, honest human connection, because we are too exhausted by our digital lives to engage.
Number 7 is a phrase about personal accountability. Get in your own way.
This means you stop your own progress with your own habits or thoughts. Other people or external forces are not the problem, you are.
The text highlights this powerfully during the workday segment. I wanted to focus on my project, but my phone habit got in my own way. We love to blame the boss or the modern world, but we are often the primary architects of our own distraction.
Phrase number 8 is highly cathartic. Pour your heart out.
To pour your heart out is to share all your real deep feelings openly. You do not hide your emotions or pretend everything is okay.
The example captures the climax of the evening transformation. Sitting with his family with no phones, he poured his heart out about how stressed he felt trying to always be perfect online.
It represents the breaking of the dam, the release of all that built-up digital pressure.
Next to last is a phrase about dependency. Hold on to.
When you hold on to something, you grip it tightly and do not want to let it go, even if you know it is not good for you anymore.
The source notes, I realized I was holding on to my phone like a safety blanket. It provides a false, childish comfort that ultimately prevents emotional maturity and real engagement with the world.
And finally, the 10th phrase, representing the resolution. Wake up to.
When you wake up to something, you finally see a truth that was there the whole time. You break through denial and become vividly aware.
The perfect concluding example from the text. After just one day without my phone, I finally woke up to how loud and demanding it was in my life.
By understanding these specific terms, acknowledging the obsession, sitting with the intense vulnerability, recognizing the contradictions, and refusing to play it safe, you construct a framework. Naming these complex emotional states allows you to identify them in real time when your hand reaches for the device.
Which provides the absolute perfect bridge to our final major section of this deep dive. You've heard the chronological story of the experiment. You understand the profound psychological mechanisms at play. You've learned the emotional taxonomy and the vocabulary of disconnection. Now, it is time to take all of this theory and apply it directly to your actual life.
Yes, let's get practical.
This isn't just about understanding a transcript. It's about changing how you live tomorrow. Let's move into our actionable takeaways.
Based directly on the narrative arc of the source material we've dissected today, we can clearly identify and distill 3 massive, life-altering benefits that come from putting down the phone for just one single day. These aren't hypotheticals, these are the documented results of the experiment.
Benefit number 1, regaining the ability to focus on one single task at work for a longer time. By removing the physical temptation of the device, you eliminate the just a second lie. You force your brain to push through the friction of difficult work, and in doing so, you allow your fractured attention span to heal and knit itself back together. You stop getting in your own way.
Benefit number 2, experiencing real empathetic connections with family members and strangers. When you consciously lift your eyes from the screen and engage with the physical space around you, you open the door to shared laughter, vulnerable conversations over tea, and the simple grounding power of actual eye contact. You stop being together but lonely.
And benefit number 3, perhaps the most profound, reclaiming the mental space to understand your true emotions and thoughts. Without the glowing safety blanket constantly available to immediately cover up a moment of boredom or a pang of sadness, you get to actually process how you feel. You stop living half inside the screen and become fully present in your own mind.
Now, knowledge is only useful if it sparks a change in behavior. To help generate a dialogue in your own life, the source material provides some excellent prompts. If you want to explore this with your social circle, here are 3 specific reflective questions derived directly from the text that you can ask your friends or your partner tonight.
Question 1. What would really honestly happen if you lived one day completely without your phone? Don't let them brush it off. Ask them to truly imagine the logistics and the emotions of it, just like we tracked today.
Question 2 is a bit more pointed and requires some vulnerability. Be honest with yourself. How many times do you think you touch your phone before lunch? It forces a conscious acknowledgement of the automated muscle memory habit.
And question 3, the toughest one of all. Do you ever feel like you use your phone as an escape when you are sitting in the exact same room as your family? Now be prepared, because asking that one might cause a sudden, uncomfortable silence. But as we learned today, sometimes intense silence is exactly what is necessary to wake up to the truth.
If discussing those questions inspires you or someone you know to actually take action, the text provides a very simple, highly approachable step-by-step guide for starting what they call a mini trial. You absolutely do not have to commit to a terrifying 24-hour cold turkey experiment right out of the gate. You can start small.
Right. Here is the step-by-step guide for a mini trial. Step 1. Make the decision to do the trial the night before. This is crucial. Do not try to make the decision in the morning when your brain is already waking up obsessed with notifications. Make the logical choice at night.
Step 2. Plug the phone into a charger that is far away from your bed, ideally in another room entirely, and go to sleep. Remove the physical proximity.
Step 3. The next morning, when you wake up, do not go get the phone immediately. Instead, actively notice your feelings. What is hard about the physical separation? What is surprisingly nice? Pay attention to the intense silence of the house and sit with the vulnerability.
Step 4. Use these raw, honest observations to consciously write a news story with your device. Decide how you want to use it that day, rather than letting the device dictate how it uses you.
And finally, to translate these concepts from a one-time trial into a sustainable, long-term weekly routine, we can outline a highly practical personal action plan. This utilizes the specific environmental and behavioral suggestions from the source to reduce phone use throughout a standard work week.
It consists of 4 simple, actionable rules for your week. First, designate the bedroom as an entirely phone-free zone every single night. Buy a $10 physical alarm clock and reclaim your mornings from the ghost grab.
Second, maintain a strict, non-negotiable no-phone rule at the breakfast table. Start your day anchored in physical reality and human presence.
Third, look at your calendar and choose just one evening during the work week, maybe a Wednesday or Thursday, to put the phone on airplane mode from the moment you get home until you go to sleep. Just one evening of unbuffered time.
And fourth, when you have practiced those steps and feel ready, attempt a mini no-phone half-day on a weekend. Leave it in a drawer from 8 a.m. to noon and see what happens to your attention and your mood.
It is important to emphasize that these aren't draconian rules designed to punish you or strip joy from your life. As the source material repeatedly notes, smartphones are not inherently evil. They are miraculous tools that help us immensely. This entire framework is simply about rebalancing the power dynamic of the relationship. It's about ensuring the tool remains a tool rather than a master.
Absolutely. As we bring this extensive deep dive to a close, let's firmly summarize the ultimate goal. The mission of analyzing this experiment isn't to declare a fundamentalist war on technology. We aren't telling you to throw your phone in the ocean.
No, please don't do that.
The goal is to learn how to occasionally, intentionally, and bravely step out of the screen. We do this so we can realize that the absolute best, most real, and most vibrant parts of our day are often sitting right in front of us, patiently waiting for us to just look up and be present.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We have thoroughly established through this experiment that our glowing screens often act as a highly effective safety blanket, protecting us from our own unfiltered thoughts, the minor anxieties of the day, and the perceived discomfort of passing boredom.
Right. We use it to buffer our minds.
So the question you have to ask yourself is this. If we are constantly reflexively buffering ourselves against the inner workings of our own minds, what profound life realizations, what deep emotional truths about ourselves, or what utterly brilliant world-changing ideas are we actively scrolling past and ignoring every single day just because we are afraid of a little bit of quiet?
That is a massive question, and it's one worth taking with you. Remember that Swiss Army knife whispering your name in your pocket. You and only you have the power to just leave it on the nightstand. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.